Abhisit Vejjajiva spoke to Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Daniel.
This will be the first election that Abhisit Vejjajiva will face as incumbent Prime Minister. He and his party were installed by the Parliament in 2008 after the then ruling party was kicked out by the courts for violating electoral law. That dissolved what remained of the party of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who was ousted in a coup in 2006. It's never been accepted by Thaksin supporters, and it's dogged Abhisit Vejjajiva, who's now also blamed by many of his opponents for last year's deadly military crackdown on anti-government protesters. But he still says he can bring unity to Thailand.
Kun Abhisit, thank you for joining us. How confident are you that you can win the election?
Well, we've been up and down the country. I think when we speak to people, we've got good responses. I think they recognise what we've done over the last couple of years, but they're facing hard times and they want to listen to us and see how we can help them through, times of high prices. And we're making some solid proposals. And I think with 19 days to go, when they see that their priorities are our priorities, they will come around and support us.
Do you realistically think that you'll get enough votes to be able to form a government? I mean, inevitably it'll be a coalition if you can form government, won't it?
Well, obviously we aim for the most number of seats. We believe we could certainly increase on our performance, improve on our performance last time, and therefore we have a realistic chance of forming the next government.
How democratic is it if Pheu Thai win the bulk of the popular vote, for you to then form a coalition with smaller parties in order to stop them from governing?
Well, Australia is now used to this kind of scenario. In a parliamentary system, anybody who puts together a majority in Parliament is entitled to form a government. But we have a tradition here, that the biggest party gets the first shot. If it can negotiate with the other parties, then it can form the next government.
How would you describe the mood of the community towards you specifically when you're out and about at the moment?
Well, the country has been quite divided in recent years. So often you see extremes, people who are very loyal supporters of the Democrat Party, the red shirts who are clearly very opposed. But even so, I would say that about 60–70% of the people are receptive to both sides. And when I get to meet them, I've got good responses.
Would you accept that the community is more divided now than it was when you took office?
I don't think so. I think in many ways there was the basic division there. And the beginning of it all, of course, was former Prime Minister Thaksin, who has been a divisive and a central figure to the conflicts. But I think that the organisation of groups like the Red Shirts and with some violent tendencies have made it more difficult.
And yet Thaksin remains a very popular figure. Do you think that you've underestimated that residual popularity?
No, we recognise that some of the policies that he implemented very popular, and he presided over a time where the economy was good. And so there's that basic support for him. But support for Thaksin, the Prime Minister that was there in good economic times, is different for support for Thaksin as a man who has led to so much instability and also caused so much chaos.
What about his sister, Yingluck, again becoming a very popular figure? How do you counter that? She has the name. She's undoubtedly making a splash with the community. How do you
we expected that? A launch of a new face, gets a bounce in the polls. You always see that.
A big bounce, and continuing to increase by the looks of it.
Well, I'm not sure about that. So I think in the final days, when the people go to the ballot boxes, they will have to think hard about the direction they want this country to move. And we're offering to move Thailand forward, putting people's priorities as the next government's priorities, not one man's priorities. And we have the policies that will address those concerns, those priorities.
Inevitably, when people consider the two options. They will consider what happened just over a year ago. Do you accept responsibility for what happened in Bangkok in April and May last year?
Right after the events, we had a censure debate, and Parliament, in fact, has had numerous debates to bring us to account. We've had a number of independent commissions. We're making progress with the cases.
Very slow.
It is slow.
More than a year later.
Everybody wants it to be faster, but you have to recognize the difficulties and have sympathies for the people who work on these cases.
Yes, I guess even with all of that, you were Prime Minister when that happened. You now have to convince people to vote you in again after presiding over that. How do you convince them that you can actually achieve change?
When the events that took place in the Middle East happened this year, there were so many people that came up to me in the streets and say, now we understand. It's not easy. And error on one side or the other could have led to much, much worse.
So if the key to progress is some sort of reconciliation, some sort of unity to get past this, how do you achieve that when you are inevitably tainted by what happened?
No, I'm saying that if the people vote for the Democrats to lead the next government, we address all people's concerns, including the red shirts. That's the way to move things forward.
I guess one big concern is that regardless of who wins the election, that could cause ructions on one or other side. The Democrats form a coalition, the red shirts will protest. Puatai would say that if they win, then there'll be a coup. I mean, how do we get past this?
Well, how do we get past this?
Gridlock?
First of all, free and fair elections. And I would urge Puatai to stop, or at least to ask their supporters not to disrupt our campaigns, the way we tell our supporters not to disrupt other parties' campaigns. Let's have free, fair elections. Let's respect the decisions of the people on the 3rd of July. Let's respect the Constitution. That applies to everybody, the military included. And let the next government take the country forward, solve the people's problems, and not make themselves a self-serving government. That's the recipe for stability and progress in this country.
Good, Abhisit, thank you.
Well,